Is we're going to go through, we have a variety of speakers planned, and they're just going to share their stories, inspiring words to get us going on spreading kindness, spreading courage, spreading hope. They're going to have about 10 minutes each to speak. And then if you have questions throughout or comments, I invite you to put them in the chat, because at the end of after them all telling the stories, we're going to go ahead and open it up to everyone else. Even if hopefully we'll have some time for others if they want to speak up or say something around a story, to share hope, kindness, words of inspiration. We'll do that as well. But the goal of this whole thing is, now that we're all here, is to really share inspiration, remind each other that, yes, even though there's horrible things going on in the world, and the world can be such a negative and scary place right now, that we can choose to see things differently. It's all about the mindset. So if we choose kindness, if we choose hope, if we choose to see things in a positive way, then it can have the capacity to trickle down, and the vibes can be contagious. So if anything, the goal of this is for you to get out of here and kind of have some additional hope, and hopefully pay it forward to spread kindness. So the world just needs more kindness right now. So as I'm letting people in, what I want to say is, I was this morning, I woke up and like, what did I do? So in June, early June, I woke up all of a sudden, and I had this vision of, I feel like I need to do something. And all of a sudden, the date June 27th popped up in my mind. I didn't know what day of the week it was. I looked, it happened to be on a Saturday. And I was praying for guidance, like, what do you want me to do? And this idea came up. I had no idea what I was going to do. I decided to make a little flyer for it. Still had no idea what it was going to be about. And then I started asking people. And they said, yes, I'd be interested. Yes, not even asking, what is this going to entail? They saw the words hope, they saw the word kindness, they saw the words equality, fighting or talking against racism. So it just touched my heart, and I thought we had something. So with all the rallies and all the voices going on around the world, I wanted to kind of also continue and create a safe space for this community as well, and whoever wants to join. So this is where we're at. My goal in my mind that came to me was, if we have at least 50 people, that would be great. I'm proud to say we have more than 50 people that registered, which is amazing. So I'm so excited. So I want us to show up as humans, talking and wanting to talk to other humans. So humans to humans. So everyone go like this real quick. What is that? Anyone know what that is? A heart. Yes. So if anything, we look around, we all look very different. We all have very different upbringings, I'm sure. We're all unique, but we all have this in common. And that's what we have to remember here and outside of the world. So no matter how you dress, what you look like, what your skin tone is, what your religious preference is, whatever it may be, your gender, exactly. So you need to just remember that we have this in common. And also when we're speaking, right now, I'm really nervous because this is very passionate to me, but it's good to be nervous, because if I wasn't, I'd be worried. Like, I'd be worried.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I have to remember what comes out of me right now, not to go back in my mind and think it has to come out perfectly. What am I going to say? I just have to remember this. So when I'm stuck with my words, and those of you that will be speaking or want to speak out later, don't think, oh, what are they going to say? Is it okay for me to say this and that? Just remember the heart. Speak from the heart. So if you see some people, getting stuck, do this. Even myself, do this, so we can speak from the heart. We got it?
Got it.
Okay. There's no agenda behind this. I'm not going to sell anything. I'm not even going to promote anything. And I ask the speakers to do the same. Of course, if you want to reach out to the speakers, if you want to reach out to anyone, I invite all speakers and everyone else to type and share their websites or their emails, because each of these speakers right here, they are awesome in their own way. They each inspire me in their own way, whether they know or not. Some I recently just met, but they each have these initiatives and this powerful inspiration and drive to really shape and make a difference in the world. So I intrigue you. It's a teaser to find out more about what they do and who they are. So I invite them to put things in the chat because they are all incredible human beings. So again, I wanted to create a safe environment for everyone here. Please, 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 let's not get political. We're sick of political. We don't want political. We want to be human. Mm-hmm. So let's if that's not what you expected in this, I respect that you would like to walk away. That's fine. If you hear something during here that it's not something you agree with, you can walk away. That's fine. We want to be comfortable for everyone, including those that are here to listen. So we want to be respectful, comfortable, but again, heart, kindness is the way to go with our messaging. Be authentic, be you, have fun. And lastly, why am I so passionate about this? Because I have felt a lot in my life that I couldn't be truly myself. I feel like I've had a fire in me all of my life, but I've been so concerned about what other people think of me and being judged and how I come across. And I've been bullied a lot in my life growing up because I've been different. I moved around in different schools. I was laughed at because I didn't dress a certain way, or when I was learning. I remember the first time I was bullied was in kindergarten because I just came from Argentina and was learning English, and I was trying to learn the language as I was being in kindergarten, and I was counting, and I was saying, instead of 3, I said tree, and all the kids were laughing at me and making fun of me, and that to this day hurts me. So there's different ways. I mean, there's countless other different examples, but if I hadn't gone through all of that, which deals with,
Andrea,
feeling like you belong, feeling like you're accepted, feeling like you have a voice, feeling like you're okay just to be you,
Andrea,
then I wouldn't be here. Yes.
I'm really sorry I had to interrupt. Can everybody mute? Somebody's making breakfast or doing something, and I can't hear Andrea for most of what she's saying. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Terry. So if it wasn't for all those struggles, then I probably wouldn't be here right now. So if anything, I want to come out there to everyone to be themselves, because you were born unique for a reason. For a reason. And we can't be ashamed of that reason. We have to be proud of that reason. And you may not know what your reason is, but others may know it before you are. Before you even do. You may be inspiring people before you even realize it. So trust your heart. Are we ready to get started?
Yes.
All right, cool. First, this is going to be very casual, very informal. You may hear my dogs bark. You may hear a kid come in. It's cool, and you guys too. But yes, Terry, thank you. If you don't mind muting yourselves, if you're not speaking, I will do the same thing. We'll have each speaker come in. I'll remind them who's next, and we'll just go with the flow. Everyone has their unique personality, angle, but we all have this. Without further ado, let's see. Big inspiration. I'll let you introduce yourself and your message. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Andrea. I have to say, Andrea and I have known each other quite a few years, back in the corporate days, and I saw that fire early on, and it's contagious. So thank you this is kind of full circle for me from many conversations we've had to be here with you. So I'm very honored. Thank you. Okay, so following kind of the outline that she shared she would like us to do, it was a brief introduction. By day and by compensation, most people would call me an executive or a leader coach. I work with senior executives and their teams to, I would have said 3 years ago and all prior, to be strategic and performance driven and all those things. And I'm really happy to say that I recently, in the past 3 years, have pivoted my business. And while all those things are true, they come from a more spiritual, heart-centered, whole person approach, to the point that I moved myself from Texas after 20-something years to the mountains of Vermont to build a retreat center for that purpose. So we're in process for that, and it should open up next spring. If COVID, beware, you know, all of those things taken into account, how we'll handle that. Why is it important for me to be here? One, I wanted to, very simply, because I didn't ask any questions. If Andrea asked me to do something, if I can do it, I say yes. That's really the first thing. I'm continue to be in service with her as she's always been with me. And so that's the initial reason. And then when I dug into the why of this, I didn't really know why until I did my homework and got prepped for this conversation. So there's probably two reasons it's important. One for me is I'm a gratitude junkie. I've built my life on gratitude in a really serious way, where I've published works in this space, and I have a daily, twice a day practice I'm committed to. It has changed my life. The leaders that I work with also develop a gratitude practice that's part of the curriculum to work with me. And so through gratitude, specifically in the times that I think some of us might feel, I know for me, feel unsettled in many conversations, that gratitude practice is my foundation. So there's a lot of times, especially if I allow myself to see a news feed or all of that, trying to figure out what's true or not true and all that stuff, I just drop into my heart center through my gratitude practice, and I can find my feet on earth again and be able to be in a place that is more kind and compassionate and hopeful than not. So that's one of the biggest reasons I think that my voice is here today, is that particular practice, and happy to share any more about it. The second reason was, for me specifically, when we went from COVID disaster to BLM, this is going to be a little emotional for me. I had about a week where I, as a white woman, felt hopeless, and because I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel like my voice was necessarily appropriate. I'm not a person of color. I haven't walked that path. I don't know that journey. I'm not a race expert. So what the hell am I supposed to do? Yet I knew I needed to do something. I have 2 biracial children. It's been coming up in my relationship with them at some really rough, we have had some really intense conversations about my own awakening to my racism as a mom, my own awakening to their experience of me in that space as a mom. And it brings up a lot of wounding. So we're doing a lot of work as a family in that space. And then I realized that I do have a gift. I do my whole mission. And when people ask me what I do, I don't necessarily say coaching. I say I create safe places for souls to show up. That is my mission in life, period. And I have a gift, and I've honed my gift for doing that through communication, through creating spaces much like this and differently for people to be able to get into that really tough stuff that most of us at times would maybe prefer to avoid. So in the 2 weeks following my, honestly, depression about what I was supposed to do and where were my legs underneath this topic and how I could be of service and deal with the fact that I was unwinding and continuing my own racism conversation, I picked up books, of course, and one that has made the biggest impact is So You Want to Talk About Race. She's amazing. Her voice, I could hear her voice. I needed a Black voice. I didn't need a white voice. I needed the other side of this conversation. And my daughter called, and she said, she's 29, a little bit of an activist herself. And she said, so why are you being so quiet? Like, what's going on? This is not okay. You don't get to be quiet in this conversation as my mother and as who you are meant to be in the world. And that was a rough thing to hear from your daughter. So I stepped into it, and I started to hear a lot of white people's voices. it was interesting to hear the shame, the guilt, the anger, the frustration of not knowing. How come I didn't know about Juneteenth? How come I didn't know about this? How come I didn't know about that? Have I just been sticking my head in the sand? If I have, what? Depending on where they grew up, they had different exposure to different things. And I have a pretty diverse network. And they seemed to need their own safe place to be angry, but I was horrified when many of them would just call their Black friends and ask them for help. And I don't, in my opinion, that didn't feel congruent with the journey. So I sent out a note to a network, and there'll be more going out, and I created a space. It's called white space, but it's a play on words, meaning that there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of literal, we need color inside those lines. And we need, as white people, need to come together to have those conversations that when we're afraid to hurt our Black friends because we don't know if we're supposed to say African American or Black, or we don't know if we're supposed to, some of us just don't know what to do, and we're all on the continuum in a different place. And so I had my first 2 sessions. It's only 8 people at a time because these are deep conversations and woundings. And while I'm not the race expert, I don't pretend that, I don't sell that, we're creating the safe place for every person that enters into these conversations to pick up their own banner and figure out where they're wounding and where their work is and have resources to do it. So that the whole intention is that we are playing our part, and it's going to be different for everybody in this conversation to move the dial and generationally correct this. I only have my answers, and those answers change the more I learn. So I'm not sitting here preaching about how it needs to look or who needs to do what. I just think we all need to get in the conversation so it doesn't go away. And I've seen videos from 1992 where people were telling us all of this. Large scales, Oprah, everywhere, right? And we didn't heed the call. And this conversation, we need to, my position on this today, and it's evolving, is that I need to open doors and remove my own junk in my trunk and get dirty with this conversation and let people suffer. Let me witness the suffering. One of the rude awakenings through the book that I was reading is that there's this concept of, tone policing. And that's when someone shows up with raw and angry with their hurt and their pain, and you say, hey, when you can keep it down and you can be nice about your conversation and I can hear you, then I will. And realizing that I had done that so many times, it was in my mind's eye, the intention was for everybody to be safe, but the reality was it was my safety I was protecting. It wasn't the safety of someone else. And I was perpetrating that hurt in a really ugly way that I was totally unconscious to until I remember I was in the garden and that chapter came on and I hit the ground crying. I was just running everywhere because the realization that was something I really needed to look at, and it was ugly for me. So I'm in this conversation here for these reasons, because I want to be a part, however small it needs to be in some way, and honor the pain and learn and relearn and unlearn in this specific race conversation. All right, let's see. How many more minutes do I have, Andrea?
2 more minutes.
Okay. So that's why it's important for me to be here. So I hope that, I've been really concerned that the Black community and or the white community might say to me, because this is how I was, the fear of being paralyzed, well, you're just creating another white space for people. And so I'm working through that fear because I know the intention of the space is to get out and get in action and stop being paralyzed. So I'm hoping that's a way that I'm making things better. I know the gratitude work that I do is a way of doing that. I'm getting into conversations where I'm personally extremely uncomfortable, and I'm sitting in the uncomfortable to move myself through that and witness the suffering of somebody else in the race conversation and many other inequality conversations. And inspiration, for me, it does come back to gratitude. In all of the moments that we've experienced, and recently I found out that a group of the people that my children hang out with, and it looks like my children all are experiencing their own thing with COVID and haven't been diagnosed. So inside of that, rather than go right to fear, I just try really hard to sit with gratitude and be thankful they have each other, and find it's not ghosting what's not okay. That's one thing I just want to say. Gratitude is not acknowledging that something isn't wrong or something's not okay or something hurts and glossing it over and saying it's all rainbows and unicorns. That's not what my gratitude practice is. For me, it's acknowledging it, dropping into it, and finding your way back to center and out of head. I find my head screws up most conversations. So I think I've answered all the conversations. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But thank you all for listening and for being here with me.
Thank you, Lexi. Let's give Lexi a heart.
Let's hear our heart.
Thank you, Lexi.
Yes.
I know it takes courage. It takes courage to speak up from the heart. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm sweating. Thank you.
Next, we have Gabriel.
You know, so thank you everybody for coming here, first of all, and taking the time out of your day to have this conversation. Now, much like Andrea, I was compelled to jump into action. So let me just tell you about myself. I host my own live streaming show. I do it 5 nights a week. I bring on all kinds of people, and my message is always about positive energy. I love showcasing that because there's so much negative in the world. So this is what I concentrate on. And I felt myself compelled to jump into action after this because this idea to come up and say something and use what I had as a forum actually formulated from the woman that's sitting to my right there. Her name is Mila. I came on her show. She told me something, and just not to really truthfully, she said in the conversation, she said, I wish more people would use their forums to bring these issues up. At that moment, in that where I was, I said, you know what? She's talking to me. Not directly, but she's talking to me. I had a forum, a big forum. So I put together a whole conversation just like this. So many different people, so many different perspectives, and she was included. And we had the talk. And it was a difficult talk. It was a hard talk to have with people. Some people, it's so, to understand what so many people have gone through, it's sometimes gut-wrenching to look at ourselves and say that's what sometimes human beings are. Some people are just evil, irrational. They don't make sense. But how do you combat that? You combat it with what we're doing right now. You combat it with hope, love, and kindness. And yes, it takes work to do this. It takes work for me to do this every single day. I am learning how to become a heart-centered person. And by doing this and taking the opportunity to learn about not just myself, about other people's stories in the world, it changes me every single day. It shows me that there's hope in this world because there's so many good people out here. If there wasn't so many good people, there wouldn't be this many people in this conversation. We are all here for a reason. We all feel that we can make a change. We all can make a difference. And it all starts by opening up these channels of dialogue. I mean, for me, as a creator and as somebody who wants to change the world, I do this every single day because I know deep down in my heart that we are better people. We are a better society. Everything that they love to showcase on media and show people, they always love to talk about the most worst part of what we are as society. I'm counterculture. I don't believe that. I believe down in the bottom of my heart, there's so many great people in this world. Every single one of us. We have the ability every morning to go out here and make that change, to spread kindness, to spread love, to spread hope. How hard is it to say I love you to somebody? It's pretty easy. And to really mean it. I mean, for me, I get up every morning and that is my purpose in life. I get up every day at 4:30 in the morning, and sometimes I don't go to bed to midnight until I know that I've made the impact that I want to that day. And this will be the fight for the rest of my life. And it will be a fight because there's always going to be somebody to push me back. That's okay. I'm fine with that. If you can keep up with me you're gonna be in for a real hard battle, because I know that by doing this, and I'm talking in everything, even with racism, it's a hard issue. It really is. And much like Andrea was talking at the very beginning about how she felt, I felt that too. I've been called names. I've been told terrible things, you know? So I know that hate's out there. But you know what I've done? I said, you know what? I'm not going to let that affect me. I'll turn right back around. I'm going to use that 180. I'm going to do it with love. I'm going to do it with kindness. I'm going to do it with compassion. I am going to do that every single day. Just because you said a word of hate to me, I'm going to come back right at it with the word of love. That is how I can combat it. That is how I can make my presence in this world felt. There's a reason I felt connection with a lot of these people that I get with. And I really get really emotionally connected with some people. Really, really, truly deep, because they touch the nerve of my soul, because they have the same kind of energy I do. And it becomes addicting, so much to the point that I want to surround myself with these kind of people, because that is the fire that I know will help build the army that everybody here, every single one of us, we all have the opportunity to do this. What I started and what I created was just a dream. 3.5 months ago, it was a dream. I sat down at a table, turned on the camera, turned on my mic, and said, you know what? I'm ready to change the world. And every single day that I get to do this is just another blessing in my life. And the blessing, and everybody that I get to meet, everybody that comes into this world, it's a blessing to me, always. I am, more than anything, I feel that every single one of you, and even like Alexsys was talking about, wanting to understand, that's beautiful. That's the first part of us, not even saying a solution, but that's the first part of us taking the step into healing, is really wanting to go and understand. We don't have to fully comprehend it, but we can start understanding at least. I mean, you won't, again, I can change my mind every single day. I can get up every morning. I can do all the things that I need to do, affirmations, prayers, whatever it is in the morning. But you know what won't change? This. I can never change that. So if somebody calls me a name, you know what I do? Okay, cool. That is me. But that doesn't define me. And I don't think it defines any of us. Any of us here defines us. So even if you're African American, even if you're white, guess what? You have the same capacity to love. That doesn't change by the surface color of our skin. It doesn't. You really just have to look down deep inside yourself. You know what? If you feel comfortable with your insecurities, cool. That's fine. All of us do. We all have them here. I do. I do every day that I think I don't know if I'm doing enough. So for me, I love to go out in the world and say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm going to do something. Sometimes it's not with direction. It's action with my heart. And that's what I when I talk to people who feel distraught, they feel depressed because of the world, I said, you're looking at it wrong. You're looking at the world very wrong. You need to look at the world as the most beautiful place that there is. That there's just scattered hate people in the world. This is a beautiful place. People, sometimes I hear them have conversations. I'm living hell on earth. No, you got it all wrong, my friend. You got it all wrong. I'm living the best part of myself in this world. I know that every time that somebody spreads a word of hate, a word of when they sit there and they use their words to tear people down, to say hurtful things, all they're doing is reflecting their own insecurities on you. That's what they do. And that's their self-defense mechanism. That's fine with me. Cool. Again, it won't define me. It won't define my place in this world. It will not define a lot of things about what I do. So for a lot of times when I sit down and I think about what I want to say and what I want to create and what I want to do, I put these things into my head and I said that this is what I want to share because it comes from inside of me, and I know that somewhere it'll find the right person that needs to hear it. And it's just that simple. Again, I want to thank Mila for saying that. I would have never gone on this mission to do these roundtables, to bring these discussions. I jumped into action. I mean, it was literally on a Thursday, on that next week on a Monday. I had my roundtable together. I went into action because I had to. I couldn't sleep. It bugged me that much. It really did. I wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. So I had to go into action. And guess what? Now it's become a regular thing. And it's going to keep going up in the thing because I've already opened these channels and I don't plan to close them. Every single one of us. So what you're doing here, Andrea, is very commendable. It takes courage to do this. I mean, to sit here, you could hear it in your voice when you were talking at first. I know, I felt it. I was in the same seat with so many different people, not knowing what was going to be said, what was scary. It is frightening to take that first step to do this. But you'll understand once you've done it. This world is so great. I felt so much better after that conversation. I literally cried. Because it felt so wonderful to know that there were other people like me in this world. I did not feel alone. And to me, that's what makes everything that we do here special, guys. So to every single one of you guys, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being here. I love every single one of you, and I don't even know none of you. But that's how much love and compassion I feel for this world. And it all starts with me taking action in all of this. And that will be my fight every single day. I've done 100 episodes. Guess what? I'm about to do another 500 of these. Another 500 of these until I get to where I need to be, where I feel comfortable saying, okay, this world is a great place now, and I know people understand it. So it will be meeting, and because I know there's more than 500 people out there who share the same message I do, who have the same thoughts, ideas, hopes. I know that they're out there. My mission is to find them, bring them, talk to them, showcase them, because they will add as much value to somebody else's lives as they are adding them to mine. And that, to me, is what my purpose is. It became even more defined last night. I was so compelled last night. I had a woman on, and she had went through so much. She was a victim of abuse, raped, choked, almost left for dead. And if she's got the heart and compassion to get up and fight, what the hell are we doing? Really, what are we doing? I sit there, and that gave me the biggest chunk of perspective out of everything, out of COVID, out of Black Lives Matter. That gave me the biggest set of perspectives. If someone can live through that and come out and want to help people and smile, what do I need to do? I need to do. So that was the best part of any conversation that I've ever had, because I got my heart broken. And I know that today was going to help fix it. And I want to take the opportunity to say, you know what, we all can do that. You know, think about your circumstances. Yeah, we all have problems. We all have bills. We all have all these other things. I know we go through it every day, every single day. But that doesn't mean we can't take the opportunity to change. Not just change our lives, change other people's lives. Starts by doing it. Spread hope. It's funny that the two of the best words in the vocabulary when you're talking about wanting to impact somebody's lives are LOVE and HOPE. Love and hope. I struggle sometimes to wonder what I've done with the first 45 years of my life. I don't struggle anymore to know what I'm going to do with the next 45, 50, or however long I get on this earth. Yeah, I was a lost soul, but you know what? I've found myself. I've found what it's supposed to be that I do. And this is, yes, gosh, that's a great one. I wish everybody could see that. 2 Timothy 1:7. We all can take lessons, man. We just got to break the cycle. I mean, Alexsys said at the beginning, since 1992, we're still being in the same cycle. What has changed? How far have we come? How far can we go? That's the question. From this point on, we know where our jump off point is. We know where we go to. We know what it is. So how do we change it? How do we take the steps? So, you know, thank you everybody again so much. And I want to add, I know we're supposed to have 10 minutes, but I want to have other people have the opportunity to talk. So thank you everybody so much. That's all I have to say.
That was amazing. Some people were saying that they had to turn off their video because they were tearing up. So Gabriel, thank you.
Well, that's what it is. We're emotion.
Yeah.
Really are. I cried last night. Same thing. I had to stop on a live video and you can go watch it. I had to stop. That's not even my reality. And it made me hurt. So we're all emotional people. And I'm sorry that we get to that point where it strikes that nerve in us. But that's a good thing. Feel it. Remember it. Use it. That's what we're doing. That's what we're supposed to do. So thank you, Andrea, again so much for this opportunity. It's really touched me, and I needed this. I really did. After last night, I needed this.
Hearts for Gabriel.
Thank you,
It's
everybody.
such an honor to know you, Gabriel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clio has a special story as well. Are you there, Clio? Can you hear us, Clio? Oh, you're muted, Clio. No, still can't. Tell you what, do you want us to come back to you? You can figure out your audio issues. Tetyana, do you want to go?
Okay, I will. So thank you, Andrea, for this opportunity to participate in this gathering and share the story. So my name is Tetyana, and I am originally from Ukraine. And I lived for the past 20 years in the United States. However, still a bigger part of my life was in Ukraine, and even before that in what was known as USSR. So I bring with me a very interesting historical cultural perspective that it's kind of quite interesting how it informs my understanding of current challenges in US. I worked in a corporate finance for a number of years, and that was my career path. My education was linked to that. I was very much rational, thinking type of personality. I was a former chess player, and then an interesting event happened in my life, and it was it's a series of spiritual experiences that completely blew my paradigm. And opened me to that side of a human life that we largely still suppress and undervalue and underappreciate in this society. And big part of my talk here will be connected to this discovery and what I want to share with you. While I underwent this transformational journey, I was in my PhD program working on a very interesting research related to the deeper meaning of human inspiration in a period of personal challenge and struggle. And all that I was studying there, and I thought I was studying just the phenomenon of inspiration. However, it came out to be much bigger than what we commonly understand in inspiration. And it has all relevance to current situations that we experience globally and experience here in US. And with that, my shift from the past finance and corporate career went into area of human and organizational development. And I'm focusing very much on human development and understanding what is really human, what is a human being, what are all dimensions that we commonly don't see and don't appreciate in ourselves. And as it happens, and as intuition directs us, there is a huge potential in that area to really understand what is human being and unlock that potential. And many of you, and myself included, are speaking about this right now, and this is what we are looking forward to ignite and inspire with this conversation. So why I joined this meeting? Obviously because Inspiring Woman Andrea Sanchez invited me, that's one thing. And the second, because of the relevance of this topic, this research that I was so passionate about, to share with you at least a little bit of glimpse of it. And the story that I want to share, and that story is our human story. To share with you that the topic of human struggle in inspiration is not just my research topic. It's a journey that we all go through as human beings. Journey is the best metaphor for our life. It's a series of events, experiences, and from a spiritual perspective, from various traditions, what we learn that it's not about good and bad, evil or not evil, it's about experience and learning. And there is very high possibility that it's not just one experience that we experience right now at this current life. There are indications that may be many more than we see through common scientific lenses. And even science recently opened to consider the possibility that it's not just one human journey. And whoever may be interested to learn more, I can share which specific areas of science are talking about that. I love Joseph Campbell's metaphor for this. He calls this a hero journey. And this, what I invite you all to consider. It's not a simple journey. It's not an ordinary journey. It's a hero journey. We are all the heroes of our journey. And some of these challenges that we undergo, that could be very rough, depending on where we in our life and in which circumstances we were born. And by looking at the person from the outer appearance, you can never tell what this person underwent through their lifetime, what kind of challenges, what kind of sacrifices, what they're struggling with right now. what kind of support they need. And by opening ourselves to consider that there is something more than our outer appearance, we come to the level of humility to understand that we are all in this imperfect condition, what Buddhism describes as common suffering or common condition as a suffering in the world. And they set as one of their goals to eliminate this human suffering. So I learned this through my research, and it also comes from spiritual tradition, and now it's bridging between science and spirituality. And that we have two sides of us. We have visible as a human form, as an outer appearance, as a history, or our stories that is attached to it, as a race, gender, age, culture, education, career, and so on. And we have invisible part that we often don't consider or consider superficially. And this invisible field that connects us to the field of consciousness, spirit, what we call God, the creator, the soul, that field becomes accessible during the moments that we call inspiration. And I don't want to retell the whole dissertation here. However, this is the field into which I invite you, and I invite you to consider this field at all times when you will be struggling, when you're going to be in the situation of despair or feel like you are losing hope. That there is larger field out there, that field that in the discussions of mindset and motivation is called the field of possibilities. That is all spiritual tradition. That field of possibilities, we called it God, we called it many other names, and name itself is irrelevant. Name itself is a symbol, is something that we attach to experience to comprehend it, to make sense of it. So to be aware that there is something larger than the form, than this form, that this, whatever, white, black, any other color, gender. And that field of possibility is our collective field, is that which we also describe as unconditional love, that one big bonding fabric of life that gives us strength, that helps us to inspire and support each other in difficult situations. And I want to remind us that the struggles that we face, and it's been in the science, in the philosophy, in spiritual tradition, because we are born into certain conditions. We are born into society. We are born into culture. We are born into certain limiting parameters to which we adjust as kids, and often as kids we don't have choice. And we learn how to survive in that environment. We learn how to fit, and that becomes a primary mode of existence for quite some time. And we become accustomed to an idea that we have to fit, otherwise we're not accepted, otherwise we're not loved. And from that, a lot of traumas, a lot of parts that we sacrifice and block, that history comes from this situation. And when we grow up, it takes enormous period of time, courage, and support to start overcoming those limiting beliefs, those blocks. And then by relearning how to connect in a different way, how to connect not by sacrificing our sides and our parts and our different manifestations of self in order to fit, but by learning to accept everyone as they are, as an authentic being, we learn a different way of relating to each other, and creating a different environment. So, I don't know, I'm not tracking my time. Andrea, how am I on my time?
1 more minute.
Okay. So I wanna bring us to considering this important topic or idea, since we're going through the period of big challenge and transformation. And that is upon us to not fall into accepting the old structures, the old paradigms that were defining us, and were creating the situation of struggle and fighting with each other. That old paradigm that through history was described as divide and conquer, because by dividing people, it's easy to manipulate them into playing different games with each other. So it is upon us to co-create a different paradigm that will spark and inspire that creator, that spiritual power of us, that empowerment. And it is a paradigm of inspiration. So again, back to that invisible, that spiritual empowering part of us. I invite you to consider that and be kind and loving and accepting of our common condition of suffering. Thank you.
Heart for Tetyana. I love all the different perspectives, expertise, backgrounds. There's no right or wrong answers, just if it comes from the heart, that's what we're here about. Thank you, Tetyana. Clio, do you want to see if your mic works now?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Hi, everyone. My name is Clio Lang, and first I want to give hearts to Andrea for putting this together. We all need to show kindness and humanity to each other during this time. My introduction is I'm an author, I'm a poet. This is important for me to be here because I'm also a humanist and patient activist. The recent story of Greg Floyd's murder and the global launch of the Black Lives Matter movement has impacted me personally through a lifetime of law enforcement never being there for me when I was a victim of violence growing up. I use poetry to bring these kinds of issues to forethought. From a young age, I was an orphan, and I wanted to make an impact on others. And I had a lot of people not really show me kindness. I was bullied too, because I was very quiet to myself. I read a lot of books, and I had huge glasses, and I apparently talked white because I was self-educated. But there were people that showed me kindness, and from a young age, through my writing, I was able to create world that wasn't the world I was living in, which was a very painful world for me. And I'm going to share a poem with you guys toward the end of my speech here. But what I wanted to talk to you guys today about is, what does worthy mean to you? Worthy to me means being acceptable and acknowledged in a social and familial setting. For Black writers, artists, and creators, many of us write to inspire social change and improve modern psychology. I found myself questioning, how can people become racist? And racism is taught. Many studies over the course of 50 years has proven that as a fact. Majoring in psychology, I learned about microaggression, which is a prejudice tool to belittle someone else. Microaggressive language is shown everywhere, and examples are from my own personal experience, or I'm not like other Black people, and other types of ugly commentary. And everyone has experienced this in some way, in some form. Comments like these can make someone feel very small. I want to mention a blogger named Zetta Elliott who wrote an article about the ongoing publishing issues with authors of children's novels receiving less representation due to there not being enough demand for African American writing. In quotes, Zetta Elliott, I read yet another article about the struggle many parents and educators face when trying to provide Black boys with reading material that reflects their realities. And a children's book center director named K.T. Horning wrote that of the 5,000 children's books published every year, no more than 5% are written by or about Blacks. And this struck a nerve in me because I have always wanted to see people of color see themselves in my writing. And I would feel really bad if my writing never got published by a publishing house because it's not really in demand because of the color of my skin. And this is least talked about anywhere in the author world. And I wanted to talk to you guys about that today because it resonated with me. Recently, I started going on YouTube to see how other African Americans live in other parts of the world. And I found a channel called Blacks in Japan where the narrator interviews a random selection of African Americans that have excelled in Japan with their own careers and businesses, and they don't experience racism there. I also became concerned with the university I just graduated from about the lack of African American psychologists in my required studies. African Americans have implemented major forces and studies in psychology for over 100 years. And one that caught my eye, her name was called Inez Beverly Prosser. She was the first African American woman to receive a PhD in psychology. And she was also a strong writer in education. But no one really talks about her. So who is worthy? We want to spread kindness to anyone regardless of color and become delighted in everyone's existence, despite social class as well. Who we deem as worthy is not just a social phenomenon, but also a public health crisis. We all have seen stories of African American women sharing their horrifying reality of not getting the same medical care as anybody else. And many cancer studies have been shown that Black women are more prone to demise from breast cancer than any other race. And why is that? Why are we deemed not worthy enough in even medicine? This also is why I'm going to be studying medicine in the near future. So my part of being a patient activist isn't just for people of color, but it's for everyone. We all have gone through different things. And when you're sick, the last thing you want to think about is the color of my skin going to make the doctor think I'm not really in pain? And I've experienced this too while living with a chronic illness. Several doctors not taking me seriously when I'm telling them I've had head pressure and I've had migraines that literally make me want to like pass out. And they just prescribed me a higher Tylenol. And that's another problem as well in our country. So I want to share you guys a poem that I wrote. It's called Black Girl Magic. If I were a white girl, I would buy Chanel instead of a gun. If I was the universe, I'd be dressed in metaphors with stars as crowns. Because a Black girl's feminism is more of a threat than man-made bullets. and non-ethnic feminism attracts more eyes than the boots of soldiers. Their narrative has more focus than the screams of colored women around the world. Our government shields from our repressed cries with metal like gladiators, as if our words were blanks. The end.
I got chills. Cleo, that was very powerful.
Thank
You
you.
so much for sharing. You're truly so talented, and I can't wait to see where you go next.
Don't make me cry.
So honored to have you here. Thank you, Cleo. We have Marshall next.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Andrea, for having me here, and everybody on this call to create a safe space for us, during this time. So I have my name is Marshall Truehill III. I have a little bit of disclaimer to put out first. I am a member of the press, and so my views, comments, and expressions don't express or reflect that of the news station that I work for. So I'm a television news producer for the CBS station here in Houston, Texas. So I just wanted to put that out there first. Can everybody hear me? Cool. So, I'm a television news producer here in Houston. I'm born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I moved to Houston after Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. And so if everybody was aware of what happened then and the plight that was exposed upon New Orleans as poverty in the community back then. So you could obviously see the disparities and the discrimination that happened with people having access to the resources that the country that they lived in, they were lacking there, and the response was. But you could obviously see that nothing really has changed that much, and people of what's going on today with the whole Black Lives Matter and things of that nature, how history has come full circle in a sense. And so as my job, the important and critical role as a journalist or someone in the media, a professional in the media, it's very important of how we document history, because if things that happened long before any of us were here, you would typically find it written in a news article or an encyclopedia or somewhere, somebody. And speaking of, Black writers, so I can definitely attest to what Cleo is saying, because I write news. I mean, that's part of my job. And so it's very hard to even create as a content creator. Is sometimes it can be very difficult, and you're not supposed to take sides, or you're supposed to be very, you're not supposed to be biased when it's covering the news. I mean, but there are times where you see things that are obvious. It's clear discrimination. It's clearly wrong, and no company wants to be associated with being the bad guy, right? So they don't often they don't take sides, or they don't stand up for everything. But lately you've been seeing that happen because of the unrest, the civil unrest that you've seen in the world. And as far as taking sides, I mean, it comes a point in time where you have to stand up for what's right and what's wrong. And somebody had a comment. So first, let me say this: there's nothing off limits. Anybody can ask me any questions. I won't be offended. No conversation is off topic. But I really like what Alexsys and Cleo and Gabriel and Tetyana all have said before me about changing the mindsets of people. And I think we begin to do that by self-checking our hearts. And so all of this, like I said, is the civil unrest, the protests and everything, that can happen. But it really starts with us as an individual, in my opinion, because there's a pastor, his name is John Gray. He said in an interview recently that you can't make a law to change someone's heart. So you can have change, you can call for all this social legislation and everything else, and all it will do is make companies and organizations bend and bow down to regulations, and like I say, nobody wants to be the bad guy. No company wants to be the bad guy, but we could stand up for, we could do all these walks for, childhood hunger and, breast cancer, and walks for veterans. But how, if we dare to march and stand up for us as African Americans, we're somehow, pushing our agenda on someone else, or we don't want to touch that, But race has been an issue in this country for the existence of this country. And I think people need to come together like we're doing today and talk and have those hard conversations, no matter how difficult they may be. And in my own opinion of why I think that many things we've not seen really systemic change, is because people don't come together and stay at the table long enough to come to a solution. There's too much shouting and everything else, and people get offended and they walk away rather than persevering through the pain. Looks like I have about 5 minutes left here. Okay, just trying to make sure I don't bore y'all to death. But so like I have some notes here. So I had about what John Gray said: you can't make a law to change someone's heart. And I believe generally people have a desire to do good, but they just don't know how. And I want to share something from a book that I have here. And no, this isn't my book. I have nothing to sell, no agendas to push here. But I just wanted to read something here about kind of piggybacking on what Andrea was saying about it all begins with changing your mind. And, and the mind and the heart are very well connected because out of the heart flow the issues of life. And those of you who may be on this call or this meeting may be familiar with that passage. But what I want to read here is I'll tell you the name of the book. It's called Good Things, and the subtitle is Seeing Your Life Through the Lens of God's Favor. And it's by Kevin Gerald. And I just want to read this little short portion here that's been, it always stuck with me here. And it says, one of the great deceptions of our time is that the idea that goodness and good things exist on their own without origin, aside and apart from God. Or worse, that goodness somehow originates in human beings. Practical goodness, common goodness, all goodness comes to be taken for granted. All of this is a lie. The truth is that God is the source of all goodness and all good things. For James 1 verse 17 says, every good thing and perfect gift is from above. So, however, when a lie is believed, then people disassociate good from God and fail to see him as good. Not only that, those same people associate God with all that goes wrong in the world, which further obscures the truth that he is good and all good things come from him. When you separate good from God, you take away the awareness of God's goodness and mankind's need to think, honor, revere, and worship him. The opposite happens when we connect good with God. We want to think, honor, and worship him. And speaking of hope and everything that Tetyana and Alexsys was saying, this is a small section here that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. So in other words, the sustaining of substance of life is to identify and enjoy the longings fulfilled on a daily basis. And so when we look at things that what we long to do here, because of this, everybody wants to see change. Everybody wants to be treated equally and fairly. And one way we start to do this is learning how to listen. Is first building relationships with people. So like I don't know very many of you on this call. I've been on a podcast with Andrea, and I've visited Gabriel's once or twice. But I think the importance is learning how to listen. That's my 2-minute warning. the importance of building relationships in teams, and how you do that, and how we can affect that. You know, when we leave from here, we all go back to our own inner circles, whether it be in the workplace or the communities or wherever. But we learn to do that by learning how to listen and respond appropriately. Because, and I say that because the value of human capital, people are your greatest assets, and investing and reinvesting into them always pays off, and it pays forward. You know, nothing is ever for you and for you alone. And some of the things that I would like to see about and I talk about the hope and expectation of what we long for, one of the things that I long for is to see, equal level playing field. Many in housing, there's a lot of housing discrimination going on. My dad was a social activist, in New Orleans. He was a chairman of the City Planning Commission, and he often vouched for low income people who were mistreated. He had to be that buffer between big developers trying to come in and gentrify everything, because he was from a housing project growing up, and you've seen the segregation times of the 60s. He was born in 1948, so you hear all the stories, and then you see how it translates into today. And just because you don't have the 4 whites or 4 colored signs up anymore, it happens internally. And so one of the other things that I long for is to see the equality in the neighborhoods. And one way, just one of those things we can do is reinvest into small businesses, especially mom and pop grocery stores, because, studies will easily show that there's a lack of food, quality food in those areas. People of color typically have low to no access to healthy food. Everything, especially in New Orleans, is like a lot of grocery stores and are rare. There are a lot of corner stores. So I would like to see that kind of thing happen, to where you can reinvest in those communities and people don't have to move far away. Because everybody deserves to have equal opportunity, just to the basic things like food. We all on this call can attest to what it feels like to be hungry. So that's one of those things. And just like George Floyd begged just for a basic human right of air, I think that when we look at ourselves and we examine our own hearts, that we could honestly identify and connect with people, and beyond racial lines, political lines, anything else. Because at the end of the day, before you anything else, you're a human being first. And that's just really what my perspective is. And, I've been discriminated against and, racial profiled and had guns pointed in my face by police. Several different occasions. Luckily I'm alive today to tell a story about it. But I think what we've seen today is really it's an outcry for the need for people to check their hearts and, be diplomatic and stay at the table long enough to hear the other person's perspective without judgment.
Wow, that was amazing. I feel like my heart, yes, heart, big hearts, Marshall. I feel like my heart got really heavy with your words, because I was experiencing what you were saying. And at the same time, looking at all these faces coming together, it gave me hope that there are people like us outside of this community that together we can create and spread kindness and change things. Thank you, Marshall. That was, Marshall and I probably are I just met him a couple of weeks ago. So
like back in March on a podcast.
Yeah, back in March, and then we just spoke, and he immediately said yes. So I think everyone was meant to connect for a reason. I truly do believe that. So thank you, Marshall.
Thank you.
We have 2 more. We have Brian and Mila. So next we have Brian.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you for having me on and inviting me to be part of this wonderful conversation. So I'm based in Sterling, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., and I'm going to talk today about hope, connection, and vulnerability. And so what if I told you that for 3 or more decades of my life, I couldn't see hope and I was disconnected from myself. And the reason for that was my relationship with vulnerability. I grew up believing that vulnerability meant weakness. And so that showed up in how I showed up. It showed up in body language of self-protectionism. It showed up as incongruence. And it was confusing when I would meet people personally, professionally, right? There was just a disconnect. And so it's the root of how I serve now in terms of helping people see differently. And so growing up with this notion of vulnerability as weakness affected my choices and how I went through a career path with not much direction initially, right? I wasn't connected to myself. So how could I be connected with other people or a direction in my life? And so Marshall teed up the connection piece really greatly in terms of what he was sharing there, in terms of that's how we create better together. That's how we unleash human greatness. And so I shut off access to the best parts of myself for many decades. And now, since I've come through the process of reframing my relationship with vulnerability into vulnerability being human, that's how we connect with one another. And that's how we lead and influence and create better together. That's what I do now in terms of my coaching and consulting and helping people and teams move to better by unleashing their human greatness and their uniqueness. And so vulnerability, how do we connect to hope if we're not first connected to ourselves? And how do we connect to ourselves if we're not willing to step through vulnerability to get there? And so this notion of vulnerability and courage are kind of part of the same coin, right? They're different sides of the same coin. So stepping into that. And so for me, this journey happened in 2013. I was selected to go into Georgetown's leadership coaching program. I went in there needing to be in control. I see my connection's a little bad, so I'm slowing down for a second here. So needing to be in control is like, I knew I was going to have to step into some vulnerability to share stories because we were going to go through practice coaching sessions together. But I was like, I'm going to control what that looks like because I have to be in control, right? And so disconnected from heart, having to be in control, this me-focused energy. And so I was going through the program, struggling because I was unable to get past what was holding me back and needed to check in what was getting in my way. I knew I wanted to be a coach. I knew I wanted to help leaders and their teams grow and create better together. But something was getting in my way and it was showing up in my practice coaching. And I needed to make a decision. Did I want to be a coach? Did I want to serve in this way or did I not? And that's the thing with change. It starts with ourselves, as Marshall was talking about and others are talking about. It's a relationship with yourself is the foundation for the change we want to create and how we're going to, the relationships we want to create and how we create connection arm in arm to create better together with one another, for one another. And so with me, it was literally about 7 years ago in May, after our second to last set of classes, I went through this deep introspective, reflective process involving tears, trying to figure out what was going on, what's getting in the way, asking myself the questions I need to ask myself. It took about a good week. And ultimately, then I came to the realization, as I shared, in terms of the reframe of vulnerability meant weakness to vulnerability as human. And it wasn't just a saying that made me feel comfortable so I could get through the program. That wasn't the point of it. It was something that I believed in. And so I tell this story often. So when I went back for the first class of the last set of classes in June, and I got off the elevator on the second floor, and there's about 100 feet between the elevator and the classroom, and two separate classmates stopped me separately, and they said the exact same thing. They said, "You look lighter." And they weren't talking about my weight. My whole physical manifestation had changed. And so while that was nice to have that validation and congruence, because I had been through a lot of incongruence in terms of how others might have seen me and how I was seeing myself, I didn't really need it because I already kind of had been through my process, and I now was in a different place with who I was. And so that relationship with self had changed so that I could be more myself. And I say that, like, that guy, the relationship, you know, the person I was would show up periodically, but not consistently, right? When I'm in, you know, a comfort zone, I'm with friends, and playing sports was often a safe space for me, being on the field and just being able to be that way. But now it was different, and other people were seeing it, and personally and professionally, things changed from that standpoint. And so from the place of vulnerability, the connection to self, my true self, and the exploration and the willingness to move to acceptance. So how do we get to acceptance and move away from judgment without this notion of being connected to yourself, this awareness that happens there, and this willingness and openness to be vulnerable to the things that we may not like about ourselves, or what other people may think, and those things that we tell ourselves in terms of not good enough, or the limiting beliefs we had. And so that really became the thing that I needed to let go of, is to challenge the assumptions and beliefs that I held, and to look at them and say, well, what of that is actually true? What of that do I want to really carry forward? And, you know, who do I want to be? And so going through that process, the language I use now in terms of my work with people and teams, it's like, it's truly a reflection of my journey. And part of that is being on this Humans First journey with several of the people. I see several friends on the call, and I'm grateful to you all for joining today and meeting some new friends in this journey. But it's really about unleashing. I talk about unlocking, unlearning, which is what I had to do. I had to unlearn some beliefs I had so that I could open up the space and connect to what I truly believe, so I could be that and bring that. And then it involved unmuting, because I muted myself for those decades, right? Some of it was societal and kind of environmental, but I can't put that on the environment. I got to take ownership of that, right? So the choice I made was to mute myself. We're all too something, right? For me, one of the things I was too much is I was too strategic, right? I was thinking too far into the future. Brian, just focus in your lane, stay in your lane, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, fine. So guess what didn't come from me in the future, because people are telling me I was too strategic? I would mute the strategic and other aspects of myself. And then I started, as I went through the process of Georgetown and then my growth process, I learned that being too something is actually something I should pay attention to, because that's probably where my uniqueness is, and probably where I bring my human greatness out of. Not just me, I think all of us do. And so that's what excites me, is seeing, listening to everybody here in terms of their stories. And stories are interesting from a connection perspective and getting to know people and seeing and hearing their human greatness. And I can hear some of that in the stories we heard today. And that's what I love in terms of the conversations we're able to have about how do we come together, right? And connection is part of coming together and creating the opportunity and the space for hope, and seeing differently, right? And so that's the last couple of weeks in particular around hope. It's been difficult because of some things I had to admit to myself, but that's not the important thing. It's the choice of silence is no longer acceptable, or even just not moving to how can I help, and actually taking action on that. And being part of these conversations is a step in that direction. Being someone who's in many of these conversations now and choosing to, and it being a little uncomfortable, because really my job is to start from a place of just listening and learning, because I don't know a lot of what I need to know to help us move forward together. In order for me to play a role in that, I need to listen. And so I play that role, and I do that. And in situations like this where I'm invited to share my story, I share that because I hope that some of this resonates with you in terms of the human aspect of, we've all got our things that we may have suppressed or muted about ourselves because we've been told certain things or we believe certain things. And that's the thing with the subconscious mind. It doesn't decipher what's true and false. It just absorbs, right? And so that's where the checking in with yourself and saying, hey, do I really believe this? Is this really true? It's an important thing. And that's what happened with me in terms of, I started to have a mirror held up to me in a certain way and invited into kind of, I started to surround myself with people that ask those questions of themselves and coaches and people that are mindful and getting into mindfulness practices and gratitude practices, as people have shared today, things that help me expand my awareness. And that's why I'm here today too, to listen and to expand my awareness so that I can be better, and then we can be better, and then we can amplify impact together. And this is a we thing, but there's this thing I talk about of it's both all about me and not about me at all. And it's all about me in that I have an opportunity to look at how can I get better and grow and become better. And then it's for the sake of us, which also includes me, right? And so it's the whole me and we dynamic. And that's what excites me about this and makes me hopeful. And so the ways we get there are kindness. The levers are kindness and love. And the choices we make around how we be there are ways we can make that happen. And so I think about this opportunity for us to move from learning and insight, which is the listening and learning piece, to action and taking purposeful action, meaningful action for the sake of the whole, for the sake of us, to amplify impact, to grow personally, to be better and create better. And all with a sense of having grace for ourselves and non-judgment, right? Because if that's where the shift started for me too, is I started to look at things differently. I as a human being, there was judgment that came in, a lot of self-judgment, but there was judgment present. And so when that shifted for me was when how I saw myself and the vulnerability story happened, but also when I got to shift from this notion of judgment to acceptance. And acceptance is really where the lever opened for me, in that, hey, the things that I might not like about myself, that's just part of who I am. And it's the accepting of that. And that whole person then looks at what does that mean for me, is to accept that. It means that I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be right. And it's again, both about me in terms of how I choose to show up, but it's really about how can I get curious about what I don't know and where I might learn more of, and what someone else's experience is like, because it's totally different than mine, so that I cannot have necessarily walked the same journey as them, but I can understand more about it, so that from that place of understanding, I'm able to create better with and for us all. And so we're at a unique time right now, and we have to be the leaders that we need, right? There's an opportunity for us to step into that role in whatever form that looks like. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you today, to share my voice and a part of my experience. I look forward to connecting with those who would like to do that. And invite us all to think about how we might start with ourselves and shifting our relationship with ourselves, or growing our relationship with ourselves, so that we might create better together. And I thank you for your attention, for your time, and I look forward to continuing on this journey with those who'd like to.
Wow, thank you, Brian. You know, something about Brian, we met through the Humans First Club, but he has always, from the very first time I met him, just his words are always so inspiring. And it's one of the most inspirational people I know. So thank you, Brian. Something you just said is it's time to unmute ourselves, to amplify the impact. And that's exactly, I think, where I am. I'm tired of being against bullying and saying it's wrong. I want to be anti-bullying. I'm tired to say that I'm not racist. I want to be anti-racist. I want to move forward and act. I'm tired of just waiting to see if something happens. So I think that's where I'm at too. And yes, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of vulnerability. People are going to not judge, but at the same time, to Gabriel's point, if you feel like you have a mission, if you feel you have a drive, you need to keep doing it. So thank you. Last but not least, Mila is, I can't describe how much I appreciate Mila. She always makes me smile, always has fun in store, but also truly, truly has the biggest heart I know. Welcome, Mila.
Thank you, Andrea, for creating this space and being really courageous to create the spaces to have these conversations. And thank you everyone else. Each of you are brilliant in your own way, and all the speakers today, you all have been phenomenally, I'm going to say bloody epic. And it's just humbling to share this space with all of you today. When Andrea asked me to be part of this panel, I didn't even think twice. I said yes, because when I first met her last year in December in Humans First Gathering, and that's why I brought in as well on a Humans First call. And meeting Andrea just spoke about how genuine she is, about genuine heart. It's about being vulnerable, kindness. She spoke about being hope. Her aura just spoke loudly about kindness and hope. So thank you for having me here. By profession, right? By profession, I'm a culture scientist, but by heart, I am another human with a beating heart, wanting to make the world a better place. My mission today and forever has been to eliminate poverty. I say poverty because we have been consumed with poverty of the mind and heart. And when we have blindness, and when I say blindness, it's just not blindness of the eye, blindness of the mind, blindness of the heart, and blindness of the ears, we can never eliminate poverty. And I say this because ever since growing up, ever since I was a child, I was born in a different country. I grew up in different countries. I've lived in different countries. And all these countries, different parts of continents I have had the opportunity to live, grow up in, has always been a multicultural melting pot. And as a child, I've always witnessed about how discrimination, racism happened. And I, sad to say, I was on the receiving end as a child of what discrimination was, what bullying was, and how it felt to be oppressed as a child as well. My family is a multicultural family, right? And my parents always told us and exposed us, just because we are all different, exposed us as to we are created the way that we are created. To Gabe's point, my parents used to say, you can't control the melanin in your skin. You can't control how you look like. You can't control the texture of your hair. You can't control how you speak. You can't control your accent. That's how you have been created. That's how you've been exposed to. But what you can control is how you see other people as a beating heart. So I have to thank my parents and the environment that they have exposed me to learn that. But the environment that I had been exposed to allowed me to see and grow up what intersectional means, right? What multicultural diversity means, and how all of these compounded to how I view the world as, and also it allowed me to see how the world exists as. And why I'm here today, as I said, I'm here to jump on the mission together as a collective to eliminate poverty of the mind and heart. And it became more hefty from the experiences I experienced as a child. I was physically bullied as a child, mentally abused, emotionally abused as a child, right? I remember feeling that why can't I be accepted? To everyone's point, Alexsys touched on acceptance. Brian, you touched on acceptance. Gabe, Clio, Marshall, you all touched on acceptance. And as a child, as a 7-year-old child, I could not fathom why I was not accepted into the world when my family was accepting me, right? Even being in a melting pot, there was a gap in acceptance. There was a gap in how we see each other as humans. And I remember being in primary school where my teacher constantly said, you're stupid, constantly shamed me in front of my classmates, 40 classmates, saying, Mila, you will grow up to be a no one. You will grow up to be a person who picks up other people's rubbish. Hearing that at that age created the narratives, which then became my reality. I remember thinking to myself, is this what the world has become, right? And my teacher was not a white teacher. My teacher was not a European, but my teacher was someone who was an Asian, right? And we often think that discrimination, racism happens only between black and white, but discrimination is a worldwide issue. And I had experienced that nuanced, granular discrimination coming not just from people who were fellow Asians, but were from people who belonged to different ethnicities as well. So my mind and my heart was so discombobulated as to truly understanding what was going on. And, you know, that experience of being, you know, beaten every single day, where my hair was pulled and slammed onto the wall by my teacher, I cried. I hid that away from my family. I felt shame. I felt guilt. The narratives which was told to me that the fault is with me, right? The narratives which was told to me as in I'm a colored person. Because I'm a colored person, I am unintelligent, was ingrained into me. That carried on to how I showed up as a teenager. That carried on to how I showed up as an adult, right? And living in different parts of the world allowed me to see how discrimination happens even within different ethnicities. And when I moved to the US, it was a big eye-opener as opposed to being in Europe or being in Asia, right? I saw the huge disparity in how blacks were treated, how foreigners were treated over here. I remember going back to school, because my background is in engineering. I remember going back to school where I was so curious as to how humans were conditioned, right? And I remember in university in Wisconsin, where I was in a class, and it was a conflict analysis and resolution class. And my professor was a 50-year-old white man. And we were supposed to play out a scenario. And I said, okay, professor, I'd like to play the leading role. And he ignored me. And I said, okay, professor, I'd like to play the second leading role. He ignored me. And then I spoke up. I spoke up because the rest of my classmates, who were all 95% of them were whites, looked at me and didn't say a word. I could understand they were either afraid or they just simply didn't care. And then I finally spoke up to the professor and said, you're clearly dismissing me, and you're clearly using your power to oppress me. And then finally, when he assigned all the roles to all of my classmates, he came back to me and said, you can play the Black Crow. And I spoke up and I said, oh, I see how it is. You're using your power to oppress me, not only because I am a foreign student, I'm a woman of color, I'm a person of color. And of course, I'm speaking up and questioning you. And I looked at my classmates and said, it is so shameful that none of you have spoken up and become my allies. Silence is a form of violence. And this is what I saw. These are the dismissive narratives, dismissive behaviors that I saw throughout my life as a child, throughout my life as a teenager in different parts of the world, and how that transferred into the United States as well. And when we say culture is evolving, culture is truly evolving, right? And that's why I'm such an advocate of dismissing and eliminating the narrative of culture fit. Because when we say culture fit, we are enabling the dismissive narratives of oppression. Dismissive narratives become dismissive behaviors where all of this becomes adoptive, adaptive, it's created, recreated, transferred. That's how culture is created, recreated, when it's not being challenged, it keeps on recreating. And seeing that really hurt me, right? And I truly, it was an eye-opener for me as to how I was a foreign student, I was treated. And then there was a second layer as to being in a university in Wisconsin allowed me to see how even different ethnicities were against me. I don't know if it because of scarcity mindset or because they were fighting for their own liberation. I had a Black professor immediately tell me, you can't speak English, because I was a foreign student, and she gave me a C on my journalism paper, and that made me question as to how is oppression showing up for people who are oppressed, right? And that is what made me create these spaces, these honest spaces to have honest conversations and to research from a scientific level of what culture is, how culture is created, because culture contains variables. Variables are people, environments, the situations, the narratives that we create, the dismissive narratives that we create, the dismissive behaviors that we create. I was out on a walk a few weeks ago and a white person came up to me, we are here to unmute you. It came from a very great intention, right? But my response was, we have never been muted before. There were blinders. There were blinders all around, because it's either you were afraid to speak up or you chose not to speak up, or the privilege that you were in that facilitated your convenience. So we have to rethink culture. We have to rethink what kind of environment we are creating together, right? And I'm going to add one more last piece as to why I'm really an advocate as to building hope, building kindness, empathy, and just planting seeds of hope for other people. I was part of a Fortune 500 company, AWS, Amazon Web Services. I had 3 white managers, female white managers. I heard the same narratives of, you can't speak English, you're a foreigner, you can't do anything right, you're stupid, you're not worthy of this position. These are the repeated narratives that I heard. And it actually pushed me to commit suicide. In 2018, I stood on top of a building ready to commit suicide because those narratives, those lies became my reality, because I heard that for 2.5 years, every single day, via text messages, via verbal abuse, via email. Can you imagine waking up to an email at 4 a.m. and that's the first thing that you see? And I didn't have allies. Every ally who said that they were there for me turned their back on me. And I said, this is not my reality. I have the power to turn my reality. And I don't know where the voice came from as I was about to jump. I have got no idea where this voice came from. There was no one around. The voice said, stop. And as I heard that voice, I received a text from my sister. My sister didn't know what was going on, and she texted me, is everything okay? Sorry. Sorry about that. That was the defining moment for me. Not to be a victim, and to change my narrative, and to help other people change their narratives. Because to be an ally, to be a partner, to be a sponsor is to fight through your own viscous landscape. And to build an environment that allows another human being to thrive. So my mission is to eliminate the poverty of the mindset and the heart set. And I tell people what we can do as humans is to truly remove our blinders and ask questions it's no longer our unconscious bias. It is our conscious bias that has been programmed into us since childhood, from the media that we see, from the conversations that we have, even with our friends who, who are not different than us, right? The jokes that we say, like, oh, are you fresh off the boat? Or where did you learn how to speak English? Or you speak English so fluently? And asking, and shaping those narratives, right? Like to Clio's point, the narratives, right? You didn't see a person who is represented who looked like you. So to really challenge those narratives, that's what I want as humans, to really rethink culture, to rethink what your heart is, because racism, discrimination is not taught. It's not inbuilt, right? It is taught to us at the playground, at homes, via media, via literature, via our education system, via the workplaces. It's not just a US problem. It's not a black and white issue. It's a human crisis that we are fighting from a granular level. So I leave you with this. In order to be present, we have to be in presence. To be in presence is to challenge our own ego, challenge our own scarcity mindset, and challenge us. Why is this person's narrative challenging me? Why is this person's presence challenging me? Why do I feel so challenged and hateful if I see a person of color or foreigner or black person? We have to challenge those questions. Ask questions to clarify your own ego, your own judgment. And that's what I like to leave you with. And I really appreciate all of you listening and being here and wanting to have this meaningful conversations, which is really difficult to have. So I truly, truly appreciate all of you.
Big hearts, Mila. Thank you for sharing, for always having the courage to be you, authentic, and really being a role model to all of us. Really, really appreciate you. That I couldn't have asked for a better way to, it's like a drop the mic moment, because that was amazing. We have a few minutes left. I want to remind our speakers I've had lots of messages coming in, and people really would like to connect with you more. So if you haven't put your email as a way to get in touch with you, please do so. And I want to open up the floor. If anyone has any questions to a particular speaker, wants to share a story, or any other words of encouragement before we wrap up. And unmute yourself, please, if you'd like to speak.
I have to run, excuse me. Powerful, so beautiful, so courageous of all of you to be present with yourself and give this message away from the heart. Very powerful. I've been crying most of the time. That's why I'm not on camera. So love you. And I have to go. I got to speak in 10 minutes.
Thank you, Terry.
Love you all.
Hug.
If I could thank Marshall, I really think he got it right. And the courage in your words was just amazing. I am challenged. If we miss that source of goodness and love, then we've set ourselves up to be a source. And I mean, it can't be Charlie Brown or Lucy. That love comes from somewhere. And if we miss the source, that's going to offend somebody. Yes, it offends people, Marshall, when you tell them that they're not their own source of love and goodness. They want to be that. It's insulting. I was raised in a nominally religious home, and no one ever explained that to me. I went to church every week. It was socially acceptable to attend. I was taught that people were born good and that it was society that messed people up. But then one day my dad took me to a black church. I was the only white girl in the church. And I saw something totally different. I saw the opposite perspective. That black preacher taught that all people were born messed up and needed to meet that source of love. Love saturated every song in those kids' voices. Every word that pastor said, there was passion. I'd never seen that before. So the reason I believe Marshall is saying is because if we insist on finding our own goodness and setting ourselves up to be that highest power, then the real highest power is likely to be insulted. It just makes sense. And so if we continue looking to ourselves for power, it makes sense that things are going to continue to grow much worse. We people continue to create a society to fit our own image of good, and that's not going to go well. I want to defer questions to Marshall. I think I've read his heart, and he's got the answers.
Well, I appreciate that, Lane. And first of all, thank you for listening. And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's not just because you know, you're supporting of what you're saying, but I look at it as you know, none of us were here at the world's creation, right? So we obviously don't know what it was like before, like truly know what it was like before we got here. And so we may have book knowledge to some degree, but none of us have experiential knowledge. We have not experienced what it's like firsthand of what our ancestors experienced. You know, we hear stories and we connect those stories with current day experiences. And so I really believe that, you know, like my prayer for everybody, it doesn't matter what you believe, but it goes back to the heart, you know. And, you know, I read the Bible and it says that, you know, above all else, guard your heart, because if you let corruption inside, you know how people that you have the saying that the love of money is the root of all evil. So when you think about that term, the root, so if you let corruption get in your heart, what happens with a root? It grows and you harbor it and you foster it. So if you can't let corruption into your heart and in your mind, and because it ultimately changes what you see. And, you know, what you hear changes the focus of what you see. And so when you think about, you know, self-examination, you know, do unto others as others you would have others done unto you. The simple golden rule, right? And, you know, we have an opportunity to be a light to everybody, right? It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't even matter what you believe. You can take the Christian aspect, you can take the religion aspect out of it, or whatever it is you believe. But, you know, like I said, we're human first, and we all have a heart in common. And so we are all connected to that source of goodness, which is God, you know, in some form or fashion. So I could never tell you, like, as a child, a child knows when they've done something wrong. They have to be taught right from wrong. Like, I could sit here all day and say that 2 + 2 = 5. And I guarantee everybody on this call would disagree, because you know what the truth is, right? But you have to be taught how to be good, you know, because like you said, you know, we're born, you know, with an inclination to, you know, we want to do good, and but we have to be taught how. Like, if I was to tell you, you know, like, I can't say all white people are racist. I can't say that. You know, I can't say all black people or hate white people or whatever. But, you know, if I was to say, you know, all mechanics are bad, right? You can't say that. I mean, but you do have a lot of them that are, you know, shady. But it doesn't speak for the people who are doing it. You can't overlook the people who are doing what's right. And so I think it comes to education and, you know, being able to listen. And we are educated when we listen to each other. You know, everybody on this call has experiences that I've not experienced. You know, we all have different experiences through walks of life, and we can all learn from that. And, you know, like going back to what Alexsys was saying earlier about the racist, history and things of that nature. Of people didn't know about Juneteenth. I learned about Juneteenth as a child, because of the education format in my schools, and I went to public school, but being born and raised in the South, the deep South, like New Orleans, and, which was one of the Confederate states and things like that. But when you think about education on a level of grade level to collegiate level, depending on your upbringing and your exposure, you are more at risk of either you're more prone to learn more or not to learn anything when it comes to other people's cultures. And so I think when you're sensitive about other people's cultures, you have a more well-rounded perspective in the way you treat people, because your perception of people is the way you treat them. And so in school, we learned, of course, we have to learn about Black history. That's what they're going to teach us. I had to write a Black history report every time throughout the school years. And I went to an HBCU. Both of my parents went to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. So those courses that they teach, you can't forget where you come from. So as Black people, yes, we have to learn our history. But we're on our own because it's not being taught. If we went to an Ivy League school, we're not going to get the same education, about those particular topics. And so that goes back to what I was saying about how we treat people. So if our perception of, Asian people, white people, Black people, whatever, is only coming from that one source, and let's call it the media. And then because I work in the media, and that goes back to what I was saying about the critical role of what my job does, and what I have to do is create fair and balance and not be, persuasive in presenting it in such a way to give you a perception of how to perceive someone. That's up to you to decide, but that can be taught at home and in the heart. So, and I'll end here quickly, but when we educate, when we take the time to learn somebody else's culture or experience and what they have experienced, I think we'll be a little bit more compassionate, because you think about who do you want to be in somebody else's life? Like, you think about every big person that made it big, whether it be Oprah, Bill Gates, or whomever. And I'm going to use Oprah for example. So she didn't finish college. She had an opportunity at an early age to launch her career, and she took it. But who was that person that encouraged her or that allowed her to do that? So that person, you think, she'll never forget who that was that gave her that opportunity. So, and each one of us on this call has an opportunity to be that person. Who do we want to be? Do we want to be that person that says, that was the person who wrote me off, 10 years ago and wouldn't give me a fair shot at a job? Or do you want to be that person that say, Gabriel was that guy, Andrea was that lady who, as well, my life turned around, where I started to become more aware and more compassionate toward people. Or this is Clio was the one who gave me that shot, at becoming, this speaker where I met so-and-so. And then next thing you know it, I wrote a book and then it took off, and now I'm making $multi-million that I can give back to the community. So who do you want to be in that person's life? That changes the narrative of everything. And so like what Clio was saying about in Japan, like I was an exchange student in Japan in 1998. So I was the only Black person. There was 4 people out of the state of Louisiana were selected to go on a full scholarship. I was the only Black person, and I was the only person from New Orleans. It was from 4 different cities in Louisiana, 4 people out of the whole state. I was the only one from New Orleans, and I was the only Black person. Like I said, I went to public school. I didn't go to some private school where they had these special programs and all these kind of stuff, or the more magnet white schools. But somebody at a school that was in a poor Black community was selected to go. And so I know the experience of what she's saying about how Black people can succeed overseas. I speak the language fluently, and when I was over there, nobody discriminated against me, at least if it wasn't outwardly, and at the age of 16, 17 back then, yes, I was fully aware of what racism looked like. And nobody, we got fair shots. I believe we can have a fair shot. And, leveling the playing field in corporate America is one of those things that I would really like to see, because sometimes I feel that, you know, because I am a black man, that my dad always told me, you already have 2 strikes against you because you're black and you're a man. And so you have to feel like you have to work twice as hard to prove that you are just equal to even have an opportunity. And I'm one of the few black producers in the newsroom. You don't really see black people in management positions and those kind of things, but, you know, inside of newsrooms and things like that. But I really feel like if we are not afforded opportunities, how can we prove that we are better? You know, and that's one way you rob people, you know, is by lack of opportunity. You know, so if I think that if you really, you know, people really got that chance, some people, I think, you know, the leaders on executive boards, you see them in these companies, you just go look at their public profiles, you know, they're not many people of color. But I think that if we had that opportunity, some of them must try to hold us down because we might outshine them. And I think that that's where it really gets hard. And they don't know that they're racist or they have racist views. Then that goes back to education until they sit down, open a book or hear their experiences and say, wow, you know, I was kind of thinking this way. I had a prejudice against, you know, whatever, you know, black people or whatever, the kind of, you know, the views that they may have of people. And I just think that that's one of those things that it goes back to self-examination and really taking the time to learn somebody else's experiences. And that's what makes this conversation so timely, because of what everybody saw on world news with George Floyd, is that this guy was handcuffed with 4 people on him, hands behind his back, begging for the most basic thing in life that we all have in common, which is air.
To breathe, my friend, to breathe. That's the beautiful part of what you're talking about. Everything, I love what you just said. Every single word, everything that you're talking about is what I believe is the best part about all of us. We all can do this. And I just want to give a big shout out to Andrea. Thank you so much for putting all this together. Thank you so much for, first of all, taking the courage to do this. It takes a lot. Believe me, I've been in this spot. I've done 2 of these, and I've done it with really big names, and it's nerve-wracking. It is heart-wrenching sometimes to have to sit there and go, gosh, I do not want to mess this up, because I want the message to really come across and resonate with people. So thank you for taking that big step. Give her a big heart, baby, because that's not easy to do, to take that step. So you're always aces in my book, Andrea, always.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. I honestly did not know how absolutely this would turn out. I just knew the premise. I knew I wanted to do something, put a community together, and I couldn't have expected anything better than this. I'm blown away by all the words, different perspectives, and the turnout. I know we're over time. If anyone needs to leave, I respect that. Go ahead. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to open it up if anyone has any additional questions, but my challenge to you, if you're about to leave, I put it in the chat, is if anything, everything that you've heard here today, if anything inspired you or you sparked something inside of you, I challenge you to pay it forward. Go and try sparking someone else. So see what you can do this week or today.
Yeah, and any of you, if you feel compelled or compassionate enough to want to come and have this conversation even further, I invite you to come on my show. Because this is what I'm about. Every single thing that you guys just talked about is what I live for every single day. And I'd be a fool not to at least offer the opportunity for each one of you to come on my show and have this conversation, because it adds so much value. Every single thing that you just said added some. I just took so much out of this conversation. I teared up when after hearing what Mila had to say. I couldn't help myself. It added value to my life, and I'm a better person for this conversation. And I hope everybody walks away with the same feeling. My life just got better. And I hope. Go ahead.
I just wanted to take a moment and thank everyone. I wanted to say I never planned to cry today. And it took me 2 years to heal. It took me 2 years, 2 years to heal from that trauma. And I thought I'll be strong today to speak about it. But that's just a testimony as to how trauma exists in our life, how it can show up at any point of time. And I have conversations. I too invite you to come and join me in difficult conversations. I host dismantling discrimination and enabling diversity through the 4 ships. And I want to have you, if you're brave enough, if you're courageous enough to have difficult questions, and where you will be challenged, I invite you, because that's what I'm trying to do. My mission is to eliminate poverty of the mind and the heart.
Only if we can do the mustache dance.
Yes, absolutely. And I make my guests do the mustache dance.
Yeah.
So everybody, yeah, I got to run, but I put the link down in there. It's in the comments. Click the link. It'll take you to my booking. It's real simple. And tell me you want to come have this talk, and I'll put everything together. It's that simple.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, everyone. All of your stories have been very inspiring, even for me, to continue what I'm doing in my mission.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you.
Anyone else before we wrap up?
Congratulations for doing it. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Alexsys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andrea. Well done.
Thank you. So
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea. Great job.
Thank you.
To everyone who shared their stories.
Thank you.
Andrea, I don't have a question per se, but a funny anecdote that kept coming back up with not funny, but yeah, it's funny. We're all sick. You know, we share the same genetic DNA with a banana. 60% of us, anyways. So 60% of humans is the same as 60% of bananas, which is kind of crazy. The other really interesting part is 99% of us is the same as everybody else on this call, and it's actually 99.9%. So there's 0.01 difference that gives you this kaleidoscope of what you see in front of us right now, which is pretty incredible. And it's amazing that in that small percentage, we get such a variety and we get to embrace that. At our core, we are more alike than we are different from everyone else here. And that's, that's the piece that we have lost touch with. And back to Tetyana's thing, if we go beyond this one level up at the energetic, spiritual next level, we're 100% the same thing. We are all just these beautiful manifestations of the same energy in different ways brought together to make this world what it is. And having been somewhere in my life, the analogy I use is, we can all say the Mona Lisa is a great painting, but if you went to the Louvre and every wall had the Mona Lisa on it, you'd get tired of looking at that great painting. And what we have here is we have the ability to step into a different room and hear a different story and learn something new about this world that we don't see if we keep looking at the same thing and we keep having the same conversations. And that ability is there. As a kid, I used to read Choose Your Own Adventure stories. And that's what we have here. We have the ability with technology now, with social media, the things that are available to us, we can choose our own adventure and we can choose to look for that adventure. We can face the challenges. We can, there's going to be dangers. We're going to get some scars. We're going to get some little things. But if we take that adventure, we take that opportunity, it will reward us. And that hero's journey we heard about earlier, it's there for all of us. And we all have this journey is set out for us. We all came to this world to experience that. And we chose to come here from that energetic source to be here now. And what a beautiful time to be here. I mean, I can think of no other time in history that we've had this opportunity to connect with the world in the way that we have now. And that gives me hope that we are all here. It can't not get better because of things like what you've created here today. So thank you.
What a great way to end, Quinn. Thank you so much. Really, really from the bottom of my heart, thanks to each and every one of you, each speakers, each friends, family members, acquaintances. Gosh, you guys all mean a lot to me. I hope to do more of these, and I hope to do more and join in to your efforts as well. Please keep me posted, because I accept the challenge too to pay it forward, and I hope you will too. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Hey, Andrea, can you save the chat and then make that
Yep.
available too? Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Thank
Okay,
you,
bye, guys.
everyone.